Alright, so this is the final Stories in 4K, but I'm going to call it Season 1 because I don't want to commit to ending it forever. So there might be a Season 2, but the reason I'm ending it now is because I'm about to dive into working on a film, and I want to be able to bring all of myself to that work. You know, I don't want to be preoccupied with what story am I going to tell next week and all that kind of stuff. Although I am going to continue to post every week, but I'm probably going to be sharing my process, talking about the different things that I'm going through with regards to gear, locations, whatever, you know. I just want to share everything. So I will be here engaging every week still, but Stories in 4K for now are gone. And trust me, I have a billion stories, so if I come back with another season, I'll have plenty of stuff to share. So anyway, what is this particular story about? The final story, the big final hurrah. It's a story about how the pandemic, the COVID-19 time of our lives, affected my life. You know, this artist, this human being, what did it do to me? Because the effect that it had on me was absolutely profound. Now, first of all, let me just start this by saying that yesterday I was running around my new neighborhood, Poughkeepsie, New York, which is part of what COVID-19 did to me because it finally gave me the kind of push to just finally move, to get out of my apartment, to move out of the city, which was a big deal for me. And so that's a big thing because, you know, moving is one of the big things they say, you know, death, moving, stuff like that. So I was driving around my new neighborhood yesterday and I was just taking a bunch of random video stuff, and I intended to do this dialogue to tell this story while I was outside, but it got so humid and so hot that my camera just stopped working a couple of times, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep shooting stuff, and I'm going to go home and shoot the story part of it in my apartment, which is what I'm doing today. So I'm going to share with you some of the footage that I shot yesterday. It's just going to be kind of random, and it doesn't really specifically have to do with this story, but it kind of has everything to do with the story because this story is about moving and shifting and growing and you know, being willing to allow yourself to be in unfamiliar places, you know, to get out of your comfort zone so that you can elevate your life. That's what I'm all about, you know, trying to grow, trying to evolve. So, COVID-19. 2 years before the pandemic, I had endeavored upon a new project called, at the time, The Book of Judith. And it was actually the second part of a trilogy that I have been working on for years. The first part being a play called Broke Wide Open that I did, which was about my very ambivalent search for my biological mother, and it was about my family, my adoptive family, my parents, my relationships, my girlfriends, my marriage. Like, it was about so much stuff. And it was a very intimate, revealing kind of story. But it was where I was at that moment in my life. The second part of the trilogy, which was The Book of Judith, which eventually became The Red Plaid Suitcase, was written because I actually found my biological mother's family. And I found out that everything that I thought I knew and that I was told by the adoption agency, my parent, like everybody, was not true. Like, I had not been given all the information. I'm not going to say that I was lied. Well, I was lied to by the agency that I came from, who dealt with my fostering and my adoption. I was definitely lied to by them. And if you've seen a show called Three Identical Strangers, a CNN documentary, that's where I came from. I came from that agency, the Louise Wise agency. So they definitely lied to me. But my parents, I don't know, and I don't think so. And actually, the people who raised me, my adoptive parents, were two of the most beautiful people you could ever meet. You know, certainly flawed. And I certainly fought with them my whole life about a lot of things. But at the end of the day, as I got older, I realized these are two amazing people, like very, very special human beings who, you know, even though I thought I had nothing in common with them my whole life, you know, it took me until they died, each of them, to understand that I really had a lot in common with them, and I grew with them. you know, and they allowed me to grow, most importantly. You know, like the fights that we had and the arguments over racism and things like that, because I was always very aware of prejudice and racism, and I called people out even when I was a little kid. I mean, I was the kid who called his first grade teacher a racist. And so I was calling out my parents all the time on stuff, any kind of injustice that I saw. And they never shut me down. Like, they never asked me to stop talking. They never told me to shut up. They always listened. They always engaged. And I realize now how amazing that is, you know, how special that is, how different that is, you know, because I was very hard on them, trust me. I was not an easy kid. So that was the second part of my trilogy, and I wrote this play. And I developed it for 2 years. And it was the best work of my life, which is kind of a weird thing for me to say, because I always feel whatever I'm doing right now is the best work of my life. You know, even if you might not think so, like maybe you've seen me in a play, maybe you've seen me in a film, maybe you've seen me in a poetry club, maybe you've heard my music, you know, maybe you think, oh, that was the greatest. I always feel like what I'm doing right now is the greatest work of my life, because I'm always looking to expand and to get better and to try new things. And so the Red Plaid Suitcase for me was an elevated step in terms of my theatrical, my solo theater work. You know, I was dealing with a musician on stage with me. I was dealing with a visual artist, so we were going to have video as well as photography, and we were going to, you know, show things on stage that were kind of make me, that were going to kind of make me look like a hologram on stage. I mean, we had a very powerful vision for what this was going to be. And I had worked so hard, and I always work so hard. Like, you know, my play, I'm not your average solo theater artist, and I'm not saying that to be a pompous asshole. I'm saying that my plays are full plays. You know, they're not, you know, one-man shows, as some people think. Because, and the reason I say that is because the solo theater world, they totally reject me. You know, they're like, you can't do that, that's too long. You know, that's too this, that's too, like I break every rule of solo theater because I'm just trying to tell a story. Like, I'm into exposition and denouement. I'm into a long story. I'm into the development of characters. I'm into the development of the story. I'm into the problem, you know, and trying to solve the problem and all the nuance and all the issues that come along with that. You know, the yellow brick road, you know, and all the stuff that you meet along the way. You know, the Wicked Witch of the West, the storms, you know, all the stuff. You know, I'm into all of it. And so my solo work is usually always over 2 hours long. And I would have to say that most people who've come to see my work, they always, you know, they walk up to me afterwards and they're like, wow, that seemed like it was 20 minutes. Like, it didn't seem that long, because it's fast, it's furious, it's exciting, it's engaging, you know, it's intimate. You know, I'm out there trying to like bare my soul to people, trying to be really, really revealing. As a mentor of mine once said, you know, be willing to open the window to your soul and let people in, and let them really know who you are. So anyway, I was developing this show for 2 years. And again, it was the best work of my life, I'll say that. I was certainly more prepared for this than ever before. It was at the Signature Theater, which is a very well-known, important theater in New York City. It was part of the Downtown Urban Arts Festival, which I had done a play of mine in previously, a play called Brooklyn Quartet, years ago. And I had a fantastic experience at that festival, and this was a big deal. And so, suffice to say, I was ready. Can you tell? I was like, this was the moment that I've been waiting for my whole life. And in fact, when I first started working in theater, I had a moment where I got on stage for the first time. Not music, this was now theater, it was poetry, as a matter of fact, that night. But I wasn't a poet really, I was working on my play. But anyway, I got on stage and I had this pause for a second. I was like, shit. This is why I was born. Like, I literally had that moment. Like, I really, really felt that. And excuse me for the lights going in and out. This is my window right here, and it's kind of cloudy outside, so excuse the changing lights. I don't have auto ISO and whatever. Just bear with me. So anyway, I had that moment where I felt like this is why I was born. And so, yeah. I felt like this performance of the Red Plaid Suitcase at the Signature Theater on June 12, 2020 was going to be a monumental moment in my life. You know, if not for my career, which I don't really think like that, and that's been kind of a problem for me. Like, I don't really think in terms of, you know, what's going to move my career ahead. I just think of how can I do better work? How can I be a better artist? How can I be a better person? I knew that this performance was going to be really, really an important moment in my life. And then the pandemic came. And even though leading up to the performance, because it was in June, and you know, the pandemic really started in March, even though I kind of knew that it was going to be canceled, I was devastated by it. Like, absolutely broken. Killed. It was a terrible, terrible moment for me. But it wasn't just me, and it ain't all about me, you know? I mean, everybody had to go through it. And so I went into this deep, dark depression, something I had never experienced before. And I've always struggled with depression. I have a lot of anxiety issues. And, you know, I work a lot of them out in theater. Like, you know, the only place I actually feel safe is on a stage. But I went into a pretty dark place. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I can't give in to this. You know, I can't allow this to take me down. You know, like it was happening to a lot of people. And I can't let this happen. And so, in that moment, I had the audacity to think, you know what? I'm going to make a movie. And I say I had the audacity because I had never even owned my own camera before. Like, I didn't know anything about making movies. I didn't know anything about any of that. You know, I didn't know about how to shoot, you know, how to expose, you know, ISO, white balance. I didn't, you know, 24 frames per second. Like, I didn't know anything. You know, aperture. What did that even mean? And so I figured, you know what, I got to learn. I mean, I did know that I had a great smartphone. I had an LG V40, which was the best smartphone for video, better than even an iPhone, because it had all these manual controls. So I could control everything that you can control in a professional camera in my phone. And so what did I do? I went to YouTube University and I studied and I studied and I found every amazing, generous, gifted filmmaker that I could find who was willing to offer information about how to learn about all these things that I had to learn how to do in order to make this movie. And I did. And I started shooting. Now I'm getting to the conundrum part, the difficult part, the complicated part, which was I started working from my theatrical script. And after 3 months of constantly shooting and hating everything that I shot, I realized that I can't work off the theatrical script. It's just not working. I have to release this play. And I mean, I have to release it from my body. Like, I have to let it go and embrace this new project, this new form of creativity. I have to embrace a new place for me. And so that meant letting go of a 2.5-hour play and letting the words spill out of my brain. And I felt like the words were coming out of my ears, just falling to the ground. And I actually went through a real mourning process doing this because, you know, what I had been through to learn this play. I mean, imagine memorizing 2.5 hours of words. And it's not enough to just memorize it. Then you have to make it good. You know, you have to block it. You have to get the lights together. You have to get everything together. You have to be a good actor. You have to do development of the characters, the development of the story. Where are you? Why are you there? Where are you going? What's the problem? What do you need? What are you trying to solve? I had to let all that go. So even though this film that I was working on was based on the same story, it was completely different. It was a different story. And so I let it go, and I slowly, fully and completely immersed myself in this filmmaking process. And I was also really excited to try to do something on my own, like film on my own. One of my favorite shows that I had ever seen in my life was a show called Homicide, something on Homicide. I don't remember the last part of the title, but it was an old series from like the late 80s, I think, or maybe the early 90s. It was on NBC. It was like before HBO and all that kind of stuff. And it was shot with one camera. And I thought to myself, I want to see if I could shoot this whole thing with this one camera all by myself and make it look like I have a whole crew, like I have a whole bunch of cameras and a whole bunch of equipment and grips and, you know, different people holding the lights and the sound. Like I had to do it all by myself. So I learned how to do that. Lavalier mic, external device, how to sync the audio to the film, lights, a gimbal, an ND filter so I could shoot at 24 frames per second to make it look like a movie. I know a lot of this doesn't make sense to some of you, but to most of you, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It was a lot to learn. And so I'll say it took me about a year to completely film this movie, which is now called The Center of Distance. And it's 206 minutes, a feature-length film. Yeah, 206 minutes. And breaking the solo rules again. But I'm so proud of it. I also had to learn how to edit it. I had to get DaVinci Resolve, which is a very difficult program to learn, but a very powerful video editing program. And as a result, I realized, you know what? I could score this myself, but if I do, I will never finish this project. And so I reached out to a friend of mine named Steve Peckman, who was like a John Coltrane level musician. And I asked him to score the film because he had seen a series of readings of my play. So he was familiar with the basic story. And he was very into it. He and his wife, Susan, had seen a bunch of these readings, so he was the perfect person to do it, and I loved his music. And I told him, if you want to do it, I'm just going to give you 5 or 6 movies that resonate with me in terms of the score, and that's basically what I'm going for, and then I don't want to have anything to do with it after that. I want you to take it, and I want it to be your score. And I'm telling you, when you see this movie, you're going to think Ennio Morricone scored this thing. It's ridiculous. You're going to think I had a $500,000 budget. And then I reached out to some friends of mine from my former life in the music business, and I found specific songs that I wanted to use in the film, and I asked them if I could use these songs, and everybody said yes. And so I have the most ridiculous score and soundtrack for The Center of Distance, my film. And I'm so proud of the story, and it's the second part of my trilogy, and it brings me to the most complicated moment of my life, which is I become a filmmaker. Because guess what happened? After we finished this film, I submitted it to all these festivals. And literally a few weeks after submitting, I got an email saying, congratulations, you won the Milan Gold Award for Best Indie Feature in Italy. Now, this is not Tribeca, this is not Sundance, this is not, Santa Fe or Toronto or whatever. But still, it's a film festival that gets thousands of submissions, and they thought The Center of Distance was the best indie feature that I shot on my phone. So after that, more came in. And now we have multiple best indie features, multiple best original score, multiple best actor in a leading role. It's an award-winning film. So I guess that makes me an award-winning filmmaker who still has a long way to go, because I'm not going to say I'm a good filmmaker. I think I made a good movie. But still, I have so much to learn. You couldn't put me on a set as a DP or something like that. I would get buried. But I know how to make a movie on my own, and I'm getting better, and I'm about to shoot a new movie on a proper camera, and actually I'm about to invest in myself again and get a better camera with cinema camera capabilities, because even though the camera that I'm using, the Sony a6400, is a really good camera, there are some limitations that are not going to allow me to do what I want to do in this film. And so you might say, well, then why don't you just scale back the film? But see, the thing is, I don't want to do that. I want to do exactly what I want to do. And so I'm going to get a Sony a7S III or an FX3 or something like that. And I'm going to learn how to use that. And I'm going to have another fantastic film. And I got Steve Peckman again. And so the conundrum is that I've fully moved to a new place. Now, I have 15 years of solo theater experience. I've won all kinds of awards. I've done festivals. I've done performances all over the world. I have sold out houses everywhere. I've played for one person. I played for 1,500 people. I performed probably over 350 days a year for 10 straight years. No joke, real talk, for real, yes. 350 days a year for 10 years. But now I'm faced with a moment where I'm thinking, am I ever going to do that again? Meaning be on stage, live in a theater setting? Because after all I've done, and after the toll that it's taken on my body, and I know what it takes to do this, I'm not going to do it without the proper support to do it. So I got offered to open the Red Plaid Suitcase recently, post-pandemic, as things are coming back together, although theater is still very challenged, but that's a whole other story. Maybe I'll include that in season 2. It's not really for this, but I got offered to open at another prominent theater, and I said no. Because I was like, you know what, unless you're going to pay me for 6 months of my life to prepare properly, because I'm not just going to go out there and do some bullshit. Like, I'm going to do it right, 100%, all of me, from my heart to my soul to my spirit, every single ounce of me. And if I'm not able to do that, I'm not going to do it. And I also feel like I paid my dues. You know, I've earned the right to have that kind of support. Now, it doesn't mean I'm entitled to it, but it does mean I deserve it, and it does mean that I can make the decision to not put myself through that again. I have given 15 years to this. When I look 15 years ahead, I'm not going to tell you how old I'll be in 15 years. But I think at this point, it's much easier for me in my life to make films like this and to continue to be an artist and to do some short form kind of theatrical poetry kind of work maybe every once in a while, but to do a full-blown play like I've been doing, how I've been earning a living for 15 years, how I've been dedicating my life, sacrificing everything in my life, you know, relationships, places to live, money, you know, traveling, fun, like I don't do any of that. I am a theater artist, 100%. I've given up so much. I've sacrificed so much. And I'm not saying, oh, I'm so special, you know, woe is me. I don't regret any of it, you know. But imagine what it feels like to me now to have this play, The Red Plaid Suitcase, which is a brand new play to you and to everybody else. But to me, see, the thing is, I can't do that play because I promised myself a long time ago that I would never, ever step on a stage, ever, unless I felt absolutely, positively compelled, like it would kill me to not get up on that stage, that I would die if I didn't share that story, that I absolutely had to. I could not function. I couldn't take another breath without doing that story. I would never get on stage unless I felt that way, because every time I've gotten on stage, that's how I feel. And that's how I feel with this film coming up. And I've written a theatrical script for this new story, which is the third and final part of my trilogy, called This Is the End for Me. I'm definitely making a movie. I'm not even going to show anybody this theatrical script unless I have the proper support to move forward with it and to develop it where I can do it like a grown person and pay my collaborators, pay for my life, and be able to do this in a reasonable fashion and not have to struggle in the same way that I have struggled, which again, I wouldn't trade it in for anything. But the thing is, I bet on myself. I bet on myself a long time ago to live this life. And I have lived for the most part, an impoverished life. And again, not woe is me. It's much better than most people. You know, like I have a roof over my head. God, thank you. I can pay my bills. You know, I have a camera. I have a car. I have ways to make money. And trust me, I am a hustler. Legally, but a hustler. But I figure it out. But I feel like I deserve more in the theatrical realm at this point. And I can do the highest level of work in film now. I can shoot something on my own, all by myself, that is HBO worthy, that is worthy of major theater, like a big theater, a big screen. I can do that kind of work because I already did it with my phone. What I just finished, it could be on HBO, it could be on Showtime, it could be on Netflix. It's at that level, technically I'm talking about, because I learned how to do that. Now, is it as good as something Steven Spielberg has done? Of course not, technically. But I'll tell you right now, I feel very confident about the opportunity to do work as high or as, I'll use the word again, elevated as I was doing in the theater. In the theater, it took me all of that I would say it took me 6 years to get to a level where I was now starting from a very high place, and then everything else I did was incrementally higher, because that's all I would accept. but it took so much out of me. And I was starting to get a little burned out, to be honest, because I wasn't getting the proper support. I was getting a lot of emotional support and spiritual support, but I'm talking about not-for-profits or Broadway or producers or money, the people who don't really give a shit about creative artistry. They just care about money. I wasn't getting that kind of support to support my creative work. And I got a lot of support, like I said, and I'm very grateful for it, but I've never gotten the, oh, we could do this on a small budget of $1 million. I've never been in that place. So anyway, I don't really care about that. What I do care about is that I am now releasing this theater piece for a while, these opportunities, and moving to film fully, 100%. I shot a documentary for somebody earlier this year, and I got paid very well for it, and it was an incredible experience, and I can do that. I can begin to shoot documentaries. I'm going to continue to make movies because I always am going to tell stories. I am a storyteller. That's what I do. Now, the pandemic blew up my life. It gave me the strength to move. It took the most important thing in my life from me, the theater. The most important thing in my life at that moment, because nothing is more important than the people I love. But I mean the most important thing in my personal life that I live with from day to day, this huge opening at the Signature that was supposed to happen June 12, 2020. COVID took that from me, just like it took from you and everybody else. This is what it did to me. But then it opened up this whole other world for me, where I've learned more in the past 2 years than I've learned in my entire life combined. And I'm going to keep going with it. And I'm going to get better and better, and I'm going to challenge myself and keep myself in these places that I'm not so comfortable with, and I'm going to grow into them constantly. I'm not going to stop. And I'm going to stay open to the fact that maybe, or the notion that maybe, somebody who's seen my work, somebody who perhaps sees the miniseries that I created off of Brooklyn Quartet, my second play. My theatrical work is documented. It's a miniseries. Maybe somebody will see that, maybe somebody who's seen me, whatever. Maybe there will be an opportunity at some point for me to get back on that stage and do what made me feel like, wow, this is what I was born to do. But we're born and we live and we die. And personally, I'm always looking for new places during the living part, because the dying part could come at any time. And so, yeah, I'm going for what feels right now, and that's my story. This is the final Stories in 4K. The story of an artist where COVID just completely exploded his life, blew it up, changed everything, profoundly, put me in a different place, 100 miles north from where I was living, from the Bronx, my beloved New York City, to Poughkeepsie, New York, which, you've been seeing video throughout this story of where I am now. It's amazing, it's gorgeous, it's inspiring creatively. There's a lot of beautiful people up here. But it's not New York City, it's a big change. The artist who shifted his creative outlet from live, raw, intimate solo theater, which he loves so dearly, which means so much to him, to film, which can also be a raw, intimate, incredible medium to tell stories that actually lives forever. I make a film, and now it lives for as long as files live, or whatever medium I put it down on a hard drive, on a file in your computer, in the cloud, whatever. Chances are it's going to live a lot longer than people's memories of seeing me on stage. Because I've always believed, I never allowed my first play, Broke Wide Open, to be recorded, because I was like, nope, this is live theater. Like, this is whatever's happening right now. It's going to happen between me and the audience, anybody who's here, and we're the only ones who get to experience this. And that's something that's very special to me, that I love about live theater. Having said that, I wish that I did document Broke Wide Open, because it was epic work, but I didn't. But I also love that about it. Like, a lot of people saw that, and we have this incredible shared memory together. So the pandemic did all of that, and here I am, moving forward. So That's the story in 4K for this week. It's the final one in this series. I thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will still be here once a week, not twice a week like I've been during these stories, but I'll be here once a week sharing my, my process for the film. I'll let you know what's going on in my career. I will share tech stuff, equipment that I'm using, some of the new gear that I'm getting, a little bit of everything, some filmmaking stuff, and always, hopefully, inspirational stuff. My intention with all my work is to contribute in some kind of way. That's all I want to do. When I was a little kid, my father once said to me, "What are you afraid of?" And I said, I'm afraid of just being one of those people that just takes up space, that does nothing, that people just forget. I'm afraid of being being forgettable, of not contributing. And so I'm going to try really hard not to be that person. So thanks again. Take care of yourselves. Please take care of one another in this crazy, chaotic, cultural, kind of political climate world that we're living in right now. It's just crazy out here. We really need to take care of one another right now. But at the least, take care of the people who are close to you, who you love. Be kind to everybody. And I'll see you soon. And here's to a better world for all of us. Peace.